When you are moving or removing clips from sequences, the principles are basically the same as when you're adding them. You're still going to work in an insert mode or an overwrite mode. Plus, there's also an option to use in and out points, and I'll show you both. So let's say, for example, I've got a clip here that I want to move earlier, and I could drop it in the middle of the shot before. Maybe that's just what I feel is going to work best for this content. If I drag over here, I could drop it onto a different track. I suppose it would just be in front then. But if I drag it into the middle of the clip and release the mouse, I'm going to perform what's called a lift edit. That means removing content and leaving a gap behind, followed by an overwrite edit, just laying it over the top. If I drag this back to its original position, I've got snapping turned on, so everything's going to snap into position perfectly. You can see it leaves a gap behind where previously it was the middle of the other clip. So this is an overwrite edit, just laying on top by dragging with the mouse. When I moved the clip in the first place, I performed a lift edit, and a lift just erases the section of the track that the clip is on to begin with. So I'm going to undo and undo again here. You can also drag while holding Command on macOS or Control in Windows, and this will still perform a lift where the clip was originally. It's not going to close the gap here. It won't shuffle things around, but it will push the existing content out of the way. So this is actually inserted into the middle of that Sitting Tree 001 clip. It may be that you don't want to leave a gap, so I'm just going to undo again. I'm just pressing Command-Z or Control-Z, and I'm going to drag again, and this time I'm going to hold Command and Option at the same time. This would be Control-Alt on Windows, and while holding those keys I'm going to release, and this will then perform what's called an extract edit first. That'll close the gap so there's no space left in the timeline panel, followed by an insert edit. So in this way you can just shuffle things around whenever you want by holding those two modifier keys. Now I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm going to undo again, and this time I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut to select this clip with in and out points, and that's the / key. Now the / key will zoom in and out in the timeline so you can view your contents, but the / key will add an in point in the sequence at the beginning of the clip or multiple clips. Yeah, I can lasso across multiple clips here and press the / key. Whatever you've got selected, you get an in point at the beginning and an out point at the end. I'll just deselect by clicking on the background in the timeline panel here, an empty track. Select this clip and press the / key. Now the in and out points in a sequence work in the same way that they do in the source monitor. You can specify the beginning and the end of the bit that you're interested in. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'll mark an in point with the I key here and an out point with the O key, so you can see what happens right in the middle of a clip. I'll just deselect, so there's no clip selected. I've just got my in and out points. And you can see what happens when I perform a lift or an extract edit. While we're working on a sequence, it's this right-hand stack of buttons that does everything. The left-hand stack is for your available source tracks, but the right-hand stack is the tracks that we're going to make changes to in this sequence. These two tracks are empty, so it doesn't really matter if they're off or on, but I'm going to keep the Video One and audio tracks selected. They're called targeted in Adobe language, and I've got my in and out points, which means I've now got kind of crosshairs on my media. The in point and the out point are specifying when, and the track targeting buttons are specifying what. So now if I click here to perform a lift edit, you can see I get a gap. So I'm just erasing that section of the sequence. Doesn't matter whether I'm getting a whole clip or not. I'm just erasing part of my content. I'll just undo, and now I'm going to click to extract, and you can see what happens. The timeline snaps, shuffling around and closing the gap. Now there are multiple ways of achieving the same things in Premiere Pro. I've just shown you how to drag things around. I'll just undo that. You can also select a clip and hit delete or backspace. You see that leaves a gap. That's a regular segment deletion. I'll just undo. You can do the same thing holding Alt or Option, and Premiere Pro will close the gap. That's a ripple delete. There's lots of ways of achieving the same thing. Most editors settle on one way mainly to work. So my advice is that you try lots of different approaches and see what feels most intuitive for you, and then just stick with that, because the main thing is that you can focus on your creative process.